Hello there, welcome to my YouTube channel. This is Sungani Titan, and this is For Triumph, part 2 of the Crypt episode. Really, it's a continuation from the episode of 2 weeks ago. This is still, as you can see, 0.7.8.1 version of the game rather than the 0.8.0 or 0.8.01 at the moment. Or it might even have updated since. I haven't looked at it now in a few days or a week anyway. However, at this point in time, there were several things about the game that I didn't really properly appreciate, and the first attempt at the final boss battle was a complete failure. I think I had more than one complete failure, and I never had a clean sheet or anything like that. I always lost people doing it. But one of them is that the game differs from XCOM slightly in one sense, that the developers intend this to be not just about the combat powers and essentially squad level tactics, but also a kind of a terrain puzzler in the fact that you have to take the terrain, using terrain effects or terrain features and the ability to manipulate the terrain, which is essentially the kick attack option, the kick power. You basically have the power to, most of the terrain elements are movable or breakable, and you have the power to kick them. And if you kick the terrain features, they tend to slide along the ground and bounce into enemy players. You can actually kick enemy players into each other. It's a force movement thing, and it does a couple of things. It can trigger opportunity attacks by your characters, and it also bounces them, hits them with the terrain feature, like the rock or the pillar or whatever, and it also maybe bounces them off another rock or a pillar that's behind it. And all of these can cause damage, and they can lead to stun attacks, and it's slightly more powerful than the pure combat power of the game, and this is deliberate. This is part of the kind of vibe, I suppose, that the developers want from this game. They don't want it to be a pure squad level tactics games, which is, say, well, I wouldn't say it's pure, but there's a lot of the combat side or the encounter side of, say, XCOM is very much squad tactics, and it plays out like a computerized version of Squad Leader or things like that. I mean, obviously it's not the same, but you know, a similar tactical approach or similar mindset would still pay off or benefit you in a Squad Leader or XCOM. But in this one, the terrain is dynamic in the sense that you can manipulate the terrain to damaging the enemies. And I hadn't really realised it at this point in time, or by the time I'd ended this playthrough. And I was becoming aware of it sort of in the last week's video, but I wasn't too sure that this was meant to be the primary way, and I was commenting on the fact that it seemed to be more powerful than the combat powers. And I had a conversation with the developers on the Steam forums, and they confirmed that is essentially deliberate. They want you to be able to look at the terrain and see how you're going to manipulate the terrain as part of the solution to the tactical puzzle that you're being given. The other thing that I didn't realise, and this is actually quite important, is that the attack of opportunity capability of your characters, your melee characters, only triggers if they haven't taken damage in that round. So you ideally want to put them into a position adjacent to an enemy unit, and then you want to force that enemy unit to move to trigger the attack of opportunity, because force movement will trigger it, and this is very, very powerful. So it can be very powerful to, say, position Solana, or the knight, Solara in this case, but I mean, you'll find that I'm going to be playing with different, they're essentially the same characters, but they'll have different characteristics, or different names, because, you know, I've lost people, and I'm advanced a bit further in the campaign, but I'm not really going to try and keep a clean sheet throughout the whole campaign. I want to see how the combat replacement system works, because they come in at lower levels as well. So how does that work if you have a fairly high level party? Is it viable? Does the fight scale to match in a reasonable way? That sort of thing is all questions that I'm curious about. However, to get back to the tactical aspect of it, one very powerful thing you could do is to get one of the melee characters, say the knight or the paladin, to be the attractor, so that a lot of enemies mass around it, and then the knight and the barbarian together, one at a time, should we say, alternatively or whatever, force movement past the other. So one of them marches up, there's a line of 3 enemies beside the knight, you kick the enemies and they all bounce off each other. So there's a force movement and the paladin nails one of them. And if you're high enough level, this will have the added benefit of triggering the paladin's healing ability as well, because they'll get a heal on a combat hit. Or you could do similar things with the wizard's whirlwind power. So potentially the vortex, for instance, might actually be more powerful in some circumstances, although you can't cast it. You can't cast the vortex on top of your own units. But the vortex could actually be more powerful in some circumstances than the fireball. So I'm about to lose this fight because I just don't have enough hit points. And the other things you have to be aware of in this particular game as well is that you have to... The stun effect is actually very powerful and very important, and generally can be best inflicted by, again, bouncing people off the terrain. And that's because the stun effect robs the enemy of actions. Because generally a stunned character has only one action, that is either a move or an attack. So if you can kick people into the terrain or kick the terrain into people, like for instance I've moved the paladin up there, if I kicked the pillar, I'm not sure if it would work with the pillar, but if I was at the brick, for instance, I could kick the brick and if there was another character directly behind, 2 of them directly behind, they'd both hit each other and both could finish up stunned. There's a reasonable chance that it would happen. Overwatch is pretty powerful as well, and if you have no good clean shot, it can be the thing to do. The various special powers can be useful as well. That's why the force movement powers in particular, like the Ranger's grappling hook attack, the Wizard's whirlwind, yes, can cause force movement, and all of those can trigger both Overwatch and attacks of opportunity. Now in this combat I fared a bit better because I did not immediately send my melee fighters into contact. So here you have an example of a stun attack. The pillar has fallen over, it hasn't killed your man, it's only 4 points of damage, which is a lot more than that, but it has stunned him. It would have been much nicer if I had 2 of them there together lined up behind them so that I could have stunned both. The brace is quite useful as well because obviously it reduces the damage you take, and that's quite powerful under the circumstances because you want to keep that down to a minimum as well. They have a lot more hit points than I do. They have brought in a party inventory system in the now, but it won't work in the actual combat encounters. So if you're dividing up potions, you have to have it done before you enter the combat encounter, otherwise it's too late. Still, and by and all, the combat encounters are very challenging, and if somebody manages to play this thing straight through without party member death from beginning to end of the campaign, I'm going to be very impressed. I'm not saying it's impossible, I'm sure it can be done. But it isn't easy, and it requires somebody probably a little bit more patience and thoughtfulness than I generally bring to these things. I've always been a bit impulsive in my wargaming and a bit instinctive, rather than just purely chess-like and coldly analytical. So, which is fine, and you can frequently get away with it against humans, but against AIs and computers, you can come a cropper from that style of play quite a bit. Another thing to watch out in the combat in this game is that the combat economy, the action economy, is something you need to keep an eye on. Because everybody just makes one attack in a round. Opportunity attacks aside from that side, and I don't think the bad guys get an opportunity attack system. But there are, in a lot of the combats, particularly the wilderness and random encounters, can be far more bad guys than there is the members in the party. And the action economy is strongly against you in those circumstances, so if one of your characters gets mobbed, they're going to get hit 4 or 5 times, probably out of every character. In fact, they're going to hit, maybe if they're close enough, they're going to hit every time, because a melee combat is pretty much 100%. It doesn't miss. The only shielding buffer you have is your ability to replenish hit points, and or your damage per round, your ability to dish out damage faster than the other guy can pile it back on. But frequently you have very limited capability of healing in an encounter, so you can't rely on healing. Like this radiant healing thing only typically does 1 point of healing per use, so that's per time, and you have to kill an enemy to get it to actually trigger. Healing potions do limited healing as well, and you can carry only at most 2 of them, so you have to be fairly judicious about how you conduct your combat in this particular game. The smoke bomb is supposed to remove or reduce the ability to be hit, because it reduces visibility and stuff like that, but it seems to me, it never seems to last. I'm not sure if it's worth it. It'd be nice if there was some kind of lingering particulate effect that would just tell me how long it was going on for, or what area it covered. Then you could make more effective use of it. Must double check that actually, is that meant to be that way, but it certainly suggests that I might have to fire out again. So anyway, we're doing a little bit better this time. We have lost Leandra, but the wizard, but we still have most of the party, and we've managed to reduce the enemies down to 3 characters, so the action economy should start to tell in our favour, because we should be getting multiple attacks in. However, they have a lot of hit points left. That was a hit at 19%. Now I think it's probably better off playing the percentage game. I've decided taking chancy shots is probably not worth it. Overwatch might be a better option, because you might actually have a much better chance of hitting in the Overwatch mode. However, things are getting a little dicey here, and well, right, Radiant doesn't attack as well. Didn't know that. I just thought it rendered him blind. Yeah, Ivy is at full health with 10 points of health. Some of those guys can actually dish out quite a bit of damage. So we have another one down, and it's down to 2 of them, but they have, what, 36, 39, nearly 40 health between the 2 of them, which is a lot more than our guys have. Fortunate enough miss. So we have back to the paladin. We come around the corner and we should be able to make a fairly decent attack, but we don't do enough damage. 8 points, not enough to kill. Now I went around to that side of the pillar because I thought it would protect me from Claude, and I'd have enough damage to take out the or at least that I'd be able to take out the bad guy before the turn would end, because I thought Crypt might be able to come around and do the job. And then I did that, which seems to me to make me think I changed my mind in some fashion. That's a very poor hit chance. Surely I could put him somewhere better. So we cancel. Doesn't look like I'm going to go for an Overwatch move here. And 2 bad guys. This is not great. Ivy's on fire. Now, can the paladin finish off? Can Solora finish off this guy? Yes, and it's provided a little bit of healing, which is quite useful because everybody's on fairly low hit points at this point. But we have a powerful bad guy still in play, and he has quite a lot of hit points as well. Another tactical point to note, I suppose, is to make sure you exploit focus fire as much as possible. That is, you prioritize bad guys that you need to get rid of, and that you focus fire on bad guys so that you actually take as many actors out of the game on the enemy side as possible, as quickly as possible, to swing the action economy into your favour so that you guys are getting more actions on the round than the enemy. This all helps in keeping your party members alive because the action economy can be a bit of a killer, especially at the start of the game when there can be frequently more enemies than you are, and therefore you're the one that's taken losses. You're the one that's taking losses, not the enemy. The enemy tends not to focus fire, but it can do so by accident by virtue of the fact that there are more enemies than you guys, and maybe you've left one unit exposed or hanging out on a flank on their own, and there's no other visible target in sight, so all the bad guys in that area goes after that person, and they can find it very difficult to survive an encounter of that nature. Stunning Claude was quite useful there because he had to move into cover. He was completely exposed, and by moving into cover, that was his action taken, so he couldn't make an attack. That gives everybody else an opportunity to make attacks, to use some of their better attacks to do so. So we continue treating him down bit by bit. He's down to 12 hit points, but Krita is in pretty poor shape herself. Now, what happened there? So I kick him, but he didn't have anything to hit off of. Might not have been the most effective thing I could have done at the time. I think a direct attack might have been more useful. However, can Solora finish the job? 78 hit points. Oh, not quite. He's still standing, but he is in melee contact, and he's not going to be able to cast from there. And do I get a second action? Yes, we finished him off. So that triggers the end scenario of the thing, and you get your little dialogue up again, and your tongue-in-cheek storyteller telling the story of the great heroes and how things changed when they were written down, as is the case with many, many legends. Overall, I'm enjoying it. I think it has a lot of potential, and I will be continuing with the playthrough. I have actually completed one of the other chapters. There are several scenarios after this when you finish this one, and I've played through some of them. So, but I haven't seen how exactly the story evolves. There's different stuff involved in different things, and I haven't done the undead one yet, nor have I. There's different factions, so there's quite a lot going on. It seems to be more driven by the story mode, that you're basically going to level up and have the characters go through a variety of. They get contracts basically at the end, like sort of your cliche advertising, your cliche D&D campaign. You go to the village inn, and there are sort of jobs for quests for adventurers, like more or less you expect on an MMO. Again, it'll be interesting to look how the whole thing develops as this beta early access process continues. I'm not too sure. I've never really been involved with early access games before, so I don't know exactly what happens next. Do they go through early access and then into beta, then a final version is released, or do they go just continue in early access until the final version is released? We'll see, and you can follow along with me. Thank you for watching. I hope you enjoyed the video. If you did, please share and give it a like. Thumbs up down below, and if you have not already done so, please subscribe to the channel. I will catch you all again soon. Bye for now.